game 2 lasts a little bit longer than game number 1, but this time the Pikarinoobs are able to overcome maybe a bit of a middling deficit there towards the mid-game and then take it there with one big team fight towards the end. Gormizer, maybe that's the right way of looking at it. I mean, you look at the gold throughout this game, 1,000-2,000 is kind of the extent of it.
Yeah.
And then 4 for 1, 35 minutes in, and that seals the deal.
That'll do it for you, honestly. In a lot of circumstances, it definitely helped out, though, that they had kind of like a half Oni Fury wave that was pushing up with them, so they were able to, 4v1 into Phoenix, into Titan. And, I mean, talk about a roller coaster of a game, right? I mean, that was a very big high point for Pikarinoobs, but they had a lot of low points that came through. And, I mean, look at Davey. He's 0-5 and 8. Like, the Anhur, which in my mind we kind of like was highlighted a little bit going into it. It looked interesting what could come out of it. Well, the answer was kind of nothing. Like he was there, he had decent gold, he had decent damage, and actually towards the end in that last fight specifically, a sick ult that kept him from getting stunned and allowed him to keep a lot of his damage coming out. But the eyes on Kukulkan specifically, as well as Rapio as the game went on, became maybe the bigger points.
Yeah, I think Pikarino had some big ultimates towards the mid and late game that really helped turn things for him. You bring up that Thanatos. Talk to me a little bit about what you saw from him that game.
Well, the third bullet point I have in my notes are Rapio's not really utilizing the early presence you expect from Thanatos. He didn't really get aggressive for long. I mean, look, we finally have a highlight from 17 minutes into the game. Not necessarily what you think of when you think about it, but a lot of it started to come online. Good positioning, good ults as well, good stuns or executes that would set it up. Once he had that Erendite, though, they were mentioning it on the cast, the scaling that you're getting from that, the immediate death scythe afterward, it's so much damage that if you get the right target, which most of the time he was able to get there, it was an easy kill for them. Granted, it did have to come through a lot of these interesting portals that were coming through. Janus, Chekio was setting up his team for pathways. Yeah,
there were so many good Janus plays throughout that game. It was kind of a power struggle, I think, between that Cuckoo, between that Janus. And apparently, that's what we saw in game 1. We just now flipped it, so the mid laners playing just the opposite god this time around. So you wonder if those will maybe continue to be highly prioritized.
If both of these mid laners, one, keep prioritizing it the way they have, but also keep playing it at the level they have, I think it's perfectly fine to keep them coming through. It was a lot of damage, also a really early Charon's coin that set him up, and so much of that last engagement seems like it can go right. In fact, again, roller coaster is the term I use, and it's mainly because Poppies win, Poppies lose. Poppies win, Poppies lose. Or if you're looking at the other way, Pika win, Pika lose. Like, it's just both teams up and down. And it really does come down to where some of those ults were placed at that last fight. Anybody could take that, but there's like a Kukulkan ult that was used maybe a little too early, a little too aggressively, when it could have been used for Peel for his team a little bit later. Like, little things like that in that last engagement flipped it on his head for Pikarinoobs. Otherwise, I mean, we might still be in game right
That's
now.
right, we could be. Well, as we move into picks and pans for game number 3, I want to bring up one maybe more thing about game 2. You talked about that Kukulkan. Technically saw him in that Guardian duo lane role.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously Cerberus may be a good matchup into the Camazotz. That's why you stick him in the solo lane. What was your takeaway? I mean, he had a good slash line, like Kukulkan did, coming out of game 2 there. Do you think that was the right spot for him to be in, though?
I can say, I think with the comp they had, yes.
Sure.
But I think I would have rather than maybe drafted something different to go into that long lane and kept that Kukulkan. He just didn't feel like he had the same bully presence he has when he is over in that solo lane. When he gets all that farm and is able to get super aggressive, it just lets him make more what feel like impactful rotations. Where he was, he had to build a little bit too much tank. And as such, didn't feel like after a certain point in the game he was doing as much damage as he could have.
Well, maybe not surprisingly, Kukulkan, Janus, Camazotz, Xing all prioritized throughout a couple of the games here, so maybe something to continue there.
Hey!
Still prioritized, but in a different manner here. The Poppies are going to take it off the board.
Well, now something's going to get through.
That's true.
No, it's not going to be Yamodra. She's going to get taken away.
She's not banned yet.
But that's like the biggest thing is when you force a respect ban like that, one from you played it really well, they played it really well, let's just get it out of here, something starts to slip through. And the same thing can be said. Xing is in that kind of conversation, did really, really well throughout these games. So Poppies are looking at the set now, and they're looking at what has been effective. They're not necessarily looking at what's the meta things we have to get rid of, because their first pick, no matter what, they're going to get something strong out of this.
Yeah, we're going to, if nothing else, see a different look especially now with Kukulkan taking off the board as well. So now the Pikarinoobs, I think, are in an interesting spot. They're going to take away the Morrigan. Do you maybe jump right towards the Odin here if you're the Poppies? There's so many strong gods right now. It's hard to really assume. But also, this is kind of a weird spot to be in if you're first pick, because there are so many strong gods right now. You have to think about the two that you're going to give away. They go Camazotz first.
Honestly, there were 3 picks that were coming to my mind. Heimdall was up there, but it was just like, okay, maybe you don't floor it. You don't get him first. You wait for him a little bit later on. Odin was the one that came to mind just because of how well Poppies played it early on. Camazotz, the Pikarinoobs, hit well, but it didn't hit consistently throughout that last game. So if Poppies can do it a little more consistently, especially depending on where they send him, if they send him to solo or if they throw him in the jungle, I think that could definitely change the way that matchup feels.
Well, the Norse gods continue to be prioritized here.
Father and son wombo combo?
Yeah, why not? I'll take it. Odin and Thor, first 2 picks here for the Pikarinoobs, and Scylla making her first appearance.
I love Scylla.
Yeah, she's good.
There you go. That's all you really need to know. But late game has a lot of good potential.
Sure.
Really good clear early on.
Talk about late game.
If you really don't, like, it's weird to say it this way, but if you don't show as much respect to like who you're mid laning against, your Scylla can then get even further ahead because she just does so much damage, and sometimes you underestimate how hard you're going to hit, or they underestimate how hard that they're going to get hit by her.
I like the way you bring up late game. Izanami, maybe one of the most well-known late game carries. Is that really, I mean, you look through the first 3 picks here for the Poppies, is this them basically saying, if we can withstand early moving into mid-game, we're just going to wipe the floor with you into the late?
I mean, there's also something to be said about Izanami allowing some flexibility in her lane as well. Because it's just like her clear's really good.
It's very good. It's not bad early,
right? Going to double tap. You can get a lot of pressure from her, and then you get rid of Hachiman, you get rid of Heimdall, you take away some of those hunters as well, and it lets her have a little more flexibility in that lane with who she's going to be with. So you can pair her a little more aggressively and absolutely dominate in that lane. And like you said, late game, you just pop your 1, get your stim, hit everybody for exorbitant amounts of damage, and then you just have a smile on your face.
That's Kukulkan and Hunbots taken for the 4th pick overall by both teams. Talk to me real quick. Scylla versus Merlin, how does that mid lane matchup kind of look in your eyes?
Honestly, I think early on Merlin's going to deal with her pretty well, but a lot of it for me is going to be their late game transitions. Scylla's going to one-shot a lot of people. Merlin's going to burn them down and set them up potentially for that Anhur, but as we saw last game, that Anhur was 0-5. I think Merlin is going to be really good for helping around some of these Gold Fury, Oni Fury, etc. fights, Fire Giant fights, but Scylla's the secure, so you have to target her.
Well, Pikarinoobs, they had that 0-5, some assists on the board to be fair, on her in the last game. They were able to get the win. They don't see that as an issue. Do you like them going back to Anhur here with their final pick? Yeah,
I like it mainly because don't look at your slash line from last game. Don't even think about it. What you have is what you get. He is a solid hunter. He should do well in this lane.
Well, Poppies and Pikarinoobs, we're tied up through 2. Game 3, this is the tiebreaker. Finch started off.
Happy to, Dawson. Thank you all on the desk. It's Finch&Aggro one more time as we move into game number 3. And as Dave was kind of alluding to, this is a best of 5. We can potentially have 5 games of SMITE to kick things off here today. Going forward, of course, the semis and finals will be best of 3s, but on this first one, it was a best of 5 here for semis, so we'll see how the Poppies and the Pikarinoobs can continue to battle this out if it does go the distance.
And going over these drafts, I think that the big thing that I'm looking at is how well Chekio is going to be able to do on this Scylla. With the Kukulkan ban very early on, Poppies wanted to go with the secure mage, it felt like. And Scylla is one of those, but I don't know, Finch. I just don't love Scylla right now. I just don't think she's very good, to be honest with you. She just doesn't do enough. Yes, she does damage, and that's the end of it. And I know, I'm sure chat and Twitter and all that kind of stuff. Oh my God, what? Scylla one-shots me with Crush and all that kind of stuff. If you're getting hit by Crush as a backliner, you've probably already lost the fight. Damage isn't everything in situations like this. Merlin can one-shot you. Every mage can one-shot you come late game. I don't know why Scylla is the bane of so many people's hatred, but I don't know. I just don't think she's really worth a pick, certainly this early. And if you are going to go with the pick, I think the Book of Thoth build is certainly a little bit stronger for her. Chronos Pendant Rush does not fit well. I'd like to see Chekio turn this Restored Artifact eventually into a Charon's coin, because I don't want more crushes of Scylla. I want the crush that's going to kill them.
You're right, man. There's a couple of gods where instead of how many rotations am I getting through of my abilities, it's I really need the first one to work. And Scylla really feels like that second one, right? She really wants the first one to work. So we'll see what the idea is going to be for Chekio here in this game. I just wonder maybe if Scylla's, getting crushed just feels so bad that it just sticks in people's mind, but it's really not quite as impactful as what some of these other mid-mages can bring. There's so many other tools that you might be able to add onto your team from the middle lane. Creed back, though, on this Camazotz, and I wonder if we're just going to keep seeing a lot of Camazotz nowadays. These Devour changes, some of the potential that he gives you in the soul lane to trade with some of those other bullies. I know a lot of the times we thought of as a King Arthur matchup. We might just be gearing up to see a lot more Camazotz.
I mean, I think he's getting a nerf. That nerf is already live on the current servers, if my memory serves me properly, to that sustain, which is the key part of the kit, is how much sustain he deals. He does a lot of damage, but everything he has is a skill shot, pretty much. So the vast majority of your damage is coming from your 1 and your 2. Those are not always easy abilities to land, but at this level you expect them to be. And so gods that have high execution thresholds like Camazotz, same reason we see a lot more Janus and Thoth and mid to high level play like this in comparison to your casual games. In the way that, you can check the SMITE.gg win rates and that kind of stuff, you'll find that those guys don't feel like they're very easy to play against, but in reality they end up losing a lot. I imagine Camazotz is very much in that same boat because of that degree of difficulty. But in this current patch that the players are playing on, sustain is through the roof, man. And even after the nerf, I wouldn't be surprised if we continue seeing a lot of play.
Could be seeing more Camazotz in our future. I wonder if we'll continue to see more of these supports in our future. We saw some aggressive ones, especially yesterday. Andy played a lot of the Circuit. We saw the Kukulkan support earlier today for Dracomariano. But this time they both kind of went more like the Khepri and the Kukulkan, much more traditional. We're having ourselves an actual duo lane. They're going to spend some time over here in lane this time. And I like it, man. I think Khepri's in a great spot right now. The res can be so strong to bring people back. How do you feel about this kind of backlining support nowadays?
I think it's still strong. I think Draco has proven that this is one of his best gods on the Khepri, so anytime that Draco in particular gets to play it, I think that it should be pretty exciting for a lot of support fans to watch. He's just really, really good on this god.
The timing on that abduct catches Davey before the leap can go off the first time, so Warchi gets in some decent poke. And you're seeing right now why I think Izanami might see a bit more play as well. She is just instant pressure in the solo lane. And I think that people will realize that she's not as unsafe later as we might have thought before. Izanami is someone who I think is good at multiple stages of the game.
Completely agree. I think that we should see a lot more Izanami. I mean, she just hits so hard. I mean, her 2 scales highly. Her ultimate is a huge scaling ability. You can one-shot squishies off of CC pretty easily. I love it in conjunction with the Khepri because you end up abducting them, and then right as that abduct's about to end, you fire off that dark portal, and you can almost on that ultimate from Chekio. You can really silence out these frontliners for a long, long time. And that's not to say anything about how strong that stim is, that first ability for Izanami, the best attack speed stim in the entire game.
It really is, man. So potent. You do not want to trade with an Izanami, which he has that up, because very likely she'll be able to win. And there was so much talk about it because the boomerang autos are kind of odd with the way that they work with Devourer's Gauntlet. Is Izanami the one that you always want? The leap can be a bit slow, though that has been changed, so now she can move a bit faster. I think that she's in a spot now where we should be seeing her a bit more as Markus is waiting, but a good ward here. USB certainly had an idea that this might be happening, so he stays back in lane, but now he steps in, has backup from Rapio, who takes to the sky, so it should be the full 3-on-3, but Rapio, so patient, ends up just coming back towards the tower. They do not want this fight.
I'm surprised. This feels like a fight that they should be willing to take, but Draco's pretty strong.
Now they want it. And in goes Mizzega with that epic uppercut, but they've already wasted the Anvil of Dawn here from Rapio. The abduct comes out from Dracomariano, pulls them right back into the crush, and that should be first blood for the Poppies. That indecision really cost them there, and the fight's going to keep going. Good res allows for one member to stay alive, but now Markus is stuck inside this pit. Gets away from the Gungir's might, but not the dunk. It's 1-for-1.
Rapio might be able to find Draco as well. That's his hammer, and Chekio is going to try and find him with that Sikkim. Does indeed, but not enough follow-up damage, at least for the moment.
Crush hits on the monsters there. Chekio finds the reset, so that makes it 2-for-1 in that fight. They'll use the rest of it, just come back to that mid-harpy. But aggro, I mean, a curious fight from Pikarinoobs.
Yeah.
It felt like.
I completely agree. If you're going in, use the Thor ult. It does a lot of damage, and it's really good. It's a good ability. We should use it for damage and not just to reposition. I don't know if Mizzega just decided, hey, we are fighting here, whether you guys want to or not, with that blink epic uppercut, but I agree. If you're fighting, fight. Use the ultimates that you have available to you. If you're not, that's fine. Give up the blue buff, but you don't necessarily have to go in after the fact.
And I think Mizzega has played well, but there have been a couple of times where it's felt like he's been on a different page from everyone else.
Agreed.
Hasn't it? I mean, sometimes where he's gone in a bit too far on his own, where it looks like he's decided later than everyone else that he doesn't want to fight. So maybe that is one of those things. I mean, these teams are certainly not going to be playing perfectly. We're qualifying to get into the Challengers circuit, then keep playing forward at the end of a long day. We're not expecting it to be 100%, but certainly some areas, I think, if you're Pikarinoobs, to try and clean up.
Completely agree with you. I think that having the support and the jungler in particular be on the same page is about as important as things can be in this game.
That's great timing, though, from Mizzega right when we mentioned him to catch out the Izanami. And this is where she can feel a bit punishable. But through it all, she survived, made it back out, and now she's got backup from Dracomariano. They can't quite capitalize there.
Surprised at how little damage Davey seems to do right there. I don't know if the impale was down, but with that pillar there, I was expecting him to just immediately pillar stun that Izanami.
Markus gets stunned by that well-timed Gungnir's Might. Dawn finds nothing, so they drop the Fear No Evil from Markus to turn the fight around. This is Rapio and USB starting the fight, and now all of a sudden it looks like they can't handle it anymore. They have to back up. Creed looking for a bit more action, but Rapio just can't come in.
No, just too low, and he actually had to use those purification beads towards the tail end of that Fear No Evil because he wasn't expecting Creed to come in and put that much damage on his head. And get on this left-hand side, though.
Once again, wants to try and start this fight. Scarab's Blessing has been used to keep Warchi up. That's why Warchi's turning around. He'd love to be killed now at this point, but once that Scarab's Blessing is done, he falls back. So another trade. This is just like Game 2, where there's been a ton of action, even if it doesn't always result in kills. They are looking for fights.
Draco, again, with good relic usage, a good ultimate, make sure that Warchi stays up, but using both your dual lane ults at the beginning is better than using them at the end, because now Davey and Mizzega have their ultimates right about up. They both come up right away, and Warchi and Draco are both much more vulnerable. Still a minute plus on those purification beads for Warchi. Don't be surprised if Mizzega heads right on over. No blink this time, though, so he's going to have to make sure he's got good ward coverage to make sure he can get in easily.
You've seen a willingness to pull the trigger from Mizzega, though, so would not be surprised if he does end up looking for action. And I think if you're playing Kukulkan, that's part of the job. You kind of have to be a bit willing to step further forward than you do on some other supports, to let those abilities fly. Really, his greatest strength is that the opponent doesn't always know when your initiation is for real or not, right? When you really need to commit to using keys or relics or abilities to react.
You can't reaction beads the epic uppercut if they blink and hit you with it really quickly, or even if they wait out that mez, you really have to predict it. If they're right next to you, you just don't have the reaction time to beads that away. It's certainly one of the hardest parts about Kukulkan is knowing, do I need to beads this? You just don't have enough time to react.
It's difficult sometimes. That's where Kukulkan can have some of those creative strengths. Properly baiting out the passive as well is so critical. So we'll see if Mizzega can bring all of those elements together here in this match. I like that he's stepping forward here on these oracles, but they still end up splitting them, it looks like, as they start to fall back. So we'll delve down into these builds again. We're about to have that same question about where they're going to go with those spiked gauntlets. We already have Davy's answer. It's the Devourer's Gauntlet, which he went last time. For Warchi, though, we'll get our chance to see if he wants Bloodforge or if he'll go the patient option as well.
I would imagine it's going to be Bloodforge. Izanami in particular, the lifesteal is hard to confirm anyways, so you kind of just want extra power because your 2 and your ult scale so well that you don't really need that ramp-up time. The extra lifesteal isn't easy to confirm for her anyways. I'd expect to see Bloodforge for Warchi. And you just get to like stand tall and kill people so easily. If you get low, you get a Bloodforge shield, your 1 comes back off cooldown, you smack that and you smack them. It's pretty easy to find 2v1s, that stuff.
Smack that. You hit me with some 90s R&B feel there. Right?
Listen, man, why not? You know, I was listening to that song fairly recently for some reason. I don't know why, but
dude,
that's kind of a bop still.
Driving into work jam, I bet, right? That's not bad. I'll have to take a look at that playlist going forward.
I got you.
It was the Bloodforge, though, of course, for Warchi. Aggro rarely wrong in these situations, so it just works so well, right? Because of those boomerang auto attacks and getting the lifesteal off the Devourer's Gauntlet is not quite the same. So you want that extra power, and like you said, the shield's really strong too.
It's just like her ability to turn and burn in fights is basically second to none. among hunters. It's like Rom hitting the steroid. Of,
Yeah.
It's like Rom having all 5 astral arrows and his 2-up at the same time, except it's all in one ability. It's all in the one there for Izanami.
And I think that that's part of the playstyle of Izanami that people weren't quite getting right. The 3 is a bit slower, not as slow as it used to be, but it's not so good as an escape cool all the time, relatively trackable as well. I think really a lot of the times you want to make sure she is standing tall more often and fighting, trying to get that Bloodshard passive. And maybe there's some ways you can use that 3rd ability aggressively even and utilize that stealth.
I agree. I think that it's not quite Morrigan-esque because Morrigan obviously has the transformation or to transform into a tankier target or a harder to hit target. But in the early to mid game where you can kind of afford to play assassin-like as hunters because you just have more lifesteal than they have damage, why not use that stealth more assassin-like? If you pop up behind someone and you immediately ult them to them and start hitting them with those roided out auto attacks, you're going to kill them pretty quickly.
Not a lot of people that can trade well with you. Pikarino's 3rd option, where he goes for the pen, is the Spear of Desolation. And I've seen a lot of people that are really high on this item right about now because you love getting that CDR and it's a good flat pen option. Where do you feel that Desolation kind of fits into the mage builds nowadays?
I think it's basically you want a flat pen option 3rd, and Spear of the Magus may as well be removed unless your name is like Anubis.
Right.
That's pretty much the only god. Kukulkan or Raijin on gods where you are gods that can use it if your composition is designed around killing tanks off a Thanatos. But that's about it.
Good initiation with this abduct forced the hand of Mizzega to go into the epic uppercut. He's now on the retreat path. Markus took a good deal of poke in that fight too.
So if you're not going to be going Spear most of the time, Divine is the pickup. And if you don't need Divine, that's when Deso's good. I'm shocked that Pikarino doesn't go Divine though. I think you need it against Camazotz. You just never kill him. Otherwise,
that's a good point.
You just really don't. And Merlin's so good at applying Divine Ruin. I would have much preferred to see Divine in this slot for Pikarino.
Hopefully, if you're a fan of Pikarinoobs, that does not come back to bite them later on. We're still waiting to see what he's going to turn that restored artifact into at this point. Gold Fury started up. We'll have to talk about that one instead. They've got this Izanami here who can burn it quite well, but they give up on it. Davey just shows a little bit of presence, and that was enough for them to drop.
That was the check to see if Davey had backed, basically. If he had backed after clearing that wave, we probably have time to burn this down. We still have that big secure mage. We don't have the Kukulkan, but we do have the Scylla, which is just as good sometimes, though. Most of the time, it's getting so much closer, and you can't pop the 2 while you're up in the ultimate. If you could combine those 2, then it's really, really as good as Kukulkan, but still solid. Still better than anything else Pikarinoobs have on their side as far as secure goes.
Chekio decides to get this Karen's coin in that 3rd slot, and that's fairly standard. But I do wonder if also that percent pen, if the idea is going to be for Draco to kind of abduct a frontliner at the start of the fight, and you want Chekio to be able to chew through him.
I agree. I think Obsidian Shard is not my favorite right now, but of the gods that I would build it on, Scylla's
that's a good point.
Probably number 1.
Yeah.
Because Crush is basically unmissable on frontliners, right? And that's the big thing for me with Obsidian Shard is it's not every 10 seconds your next ability that lands on a god gets 10% pen. It's your next ability you throw, and then 10 seconds later you get this passive up again. Scylla's one of the only gods that can really not get punished by that super hard, and that's her job is tank killing a lot of the time. Crush has percent pen on it already. I think that I would have much preferred the Obsidian Shard for Chekio here. Abduct into Crush, Root, Auto Attack, Detonate. You're in a much better spot.
Mizzega looks in one more time with the epic uppercut to get the Poppies off of this Gold Fury, and it works in that regard. The Gold Fury does end up having to be dropped. That's the blink down from Mizzega. He's been relying on that to initiate a lot, so the Poppies have a small moment to breathe where they don't have to worry about that.
As soon as Rapio starts shading over, don't even worry about it. We're not messing with that Gold Fury if Rapio is on our side of the map. Worth noting that Markus has no pen right now. He went with a very power-heavy kill squishies build. This build obliterates backliners early on. Transcendence into Hydras is great at killing backliners because a ton of power. It's a very effective passive on Hydras, especially for Hunbots. But that means that overpowered USB and Mizzega can pretty much just walk at Markus the majority of the time. and feel pretty confident. I wonder if he's going to go into an early Titan's Bane to try and make up for that lack of pen early on.
We'd like to see it. He's already got plenty of CDR where he is now, so Titan's Bane feels fine. Dracomariano does pull one member in. Fear No Evil is there, and Mizzega just barely is still alive. I think he would have had the passive proc anyway, but they don't even get that. So he should be able to get his back off. The question is, can the Poppies find anything in that time? Looks like the answer is no. 2
ultimates used. If that Hydra's is a crusher instead for Markus, that's probably is the passive.
Creed willing to commit to try and find the kill. I'm a Monster does not land, and Pikarino just kind of jukes around and is able to stay alive. The Poppies have committed quite a bit to try and find these kills and haven't found them. Now regrouping a bit and heading back towards gold, but Creed's caught out over on the right-hand side. Rapio takes to the sky with the Anvil of Dawn as well, but he's going to the back line, wants to get to this Scylla, teleports to the hammer, can't get to him. Warchi gets the kill, and Chekio makes it out.
And that's Draco again with that ultimate. Even if all that had landed, no way Chekio falls. An all-in commit against the Khepri, not your best plan. Now you've lost both Rapio and Davy, and this should be a good Gold Fury opportunity now for the Poppies.
Might even be able to punish overpowered USB, who's starting to run out of mana at this point. But the Poppies still a bit apprehensive about starting up this Gold Fury. They're just going to take their 2 picks and see if they can find anything else here in the jungle. But with USB right nearby, they may not love any fight that they're presented with.
Just really difficult to kill this Odin at this point because you just don't have a whole lot of penetration anywhere against physicals. Now, you got 20% on Chekio, but he's got no magic D besides his base kit. Warchi and Markus, neither of them have any pen, so how do they kill him?
Gold Fury half. Mizzega goes in one more time with that blink, but this time they're all waiting for him. They turn and burn. The Kukulkan has been removed. Gold Fury still leashed at this point too, so it is still low. USB and Pikarino are going to have to get in there, and they can't make it in time. Poppies, over a prolonged fight, grab Gold Fury.
Surprised that Chekio doesn't use the ultimate to secure. I mean,
risky.
If you're building this much CDR in Scylla, use it every time it's up. I think that a big trap for Scylla players is expecting your ultimate to do the waterfall quadra kill every single time.
Right.
Let's be real. I'm a Monster is the worst damaging ability in Scylla's kit, and it isn't close. Both Crush and Sycamore are way, way better. I think you should just be throwing away that ultimate the majority of the time. Use it for CC immunity, use it for mobility, use it to secure objectives like that. Doesn't end up punishing the Poppies now, but that's something to be wary of later.
I think you're right. As Pyromancer goes down for the Poppies, Pikarinos can't quite get USB in there in time to try and defend it. But sometimes this ultimate feels a bit like a trap. You're rooted for a little bit when you use it. That is a window that can absolutely be utilized to blow up a Scylla as well. I mean, it's not perfect, this I'm a Monster ability, and you got to make sure that you're not trapping yourself.
I got one shot by it this one time. What do you mean?
I agree, man. Sikkim, a lot of the times, I think, goes under.
Best ability in the kit.
Once it's at rank 5 and that's spreading roots out, that's the one I'm worried about.
Broken. The insane ability. I mean, root cripple is just nuts in this game. It's so hard to. So many gods are so dependent on their mobility. Root crippling for that amount of time. It's really that if she didn't have another big damage nuke after that, maybe it wouldn't feel so nuts.
Right.
But Sikkim into Crush is just insane.
It's free in a lot of situations. To check in on some other builds, we were wondering if Markus was going to go into some pen afterwards, specifically Titan's Bane. He does get some here with this Aaron dive, but this feels a bit more like he really is trying to blow one person up here in particular.
Yeah, I mean, this is just pure power so far. And if overpowered USB does exactly what he did in the last team fight, I'm surprised that it doesn't convince Markus that he needs pen now. I mean, there is a big difference in that now Warchi has Executioner, which certainly matters, because that's going to strip away his protection for Markus included, so that helps without a doubt, but that is surprising to me, because overpowered USB really got to do whatever he wanted in that last team fight. He wasn't under any pressure at all.
Duck to land. Markus throws a little bit of damage into Mizzega, but again, that's just not going to be Markus's target going forward, not with the procs that he currently has built and not much really available to Markus here at this point. So they're grouped up around the tier 1 tower in mid, looking to throw it down. There's the abduct into the I'm a Monster, and Mizzega never gets a chance to say anything about it. Chekio might let one more fly once Rapio lands, but can't find that. He was right not to commit. I'm a Monster would have been there for him. Creed takes to the bat out of hell to try and keep the fight going. He ends up landing in the back line, locked now inside the cage, but able to jump right out.
He's fine. Draco's with ult this whole time. Still has Shell as well. This is a bad fight for Pikarinoobs for sure.
And they're still trying to stick around to defend the tower. Davey steps forward with the Desert Fury, and he is the one that looks like he got blown up on the back end. Poppies really can't afford to push right back in and grab this tier 1 tower.
This should be pretty easy for them. Again, at the very beginning of that, Mizzega blinked in and ulted and found nothing for it.
And now they're going to be able to lock down onto Pikarino in the back of the fight. Markus cleans him up easy. A double kill as USB falls as well. Markus starting to feel himself a bit as he gets 2 on the back end. And like you said, the Poppies kind of just brute force it.
Yeah, I mean, that as soon as Mizzega blinked in and ulted right away, found next to nothing for it. Maybe a little bit of damage, but didn't get a single relic. Draco plucked him, got some damage off, and just makes it very hard for that chase to continue for Pikarinoobs.
Rapio still has the hammer that allowed him to get away on the back end, but that was risky otherwise. Poppies now enjoy about a 7,000 gold lead. We said before, 3, 4, 5, that's not quite enough, but 7,000 is when you're starting to get to that point where the Poppies should feel pretty comfortably in control of this match.
Completely agree. This is their game to lose at this point. You've got a really good late game composition as well. It's not like you've picked a whole bunch early game and then it's, oh, we're just going to fall off. Their late game is really, really solid, and there's just not enough protection on the other side to stop this Dracomariano abduct into all this extra burst damage from Warchi and from Chekio in the composition for the Poppies. Pikarinoobs have to find a way to disrupt this combo, whether it's CC from Pikarino or Rapio to stop Dracomariano, whether it's getting on top of Chekio and Warchi to make sure they can't just easily follow up. The way that they're playing these team fights so far would net them a win in this game.
Are you surprised at all that Chekio picks up the Divine Ruin
Very.
at the 4th slot for this pen option? I mean,
Yeah.
Scylla doesn't apply particularly well, and I don't know what they're really so worried about anti-hero.
I agree. Deso is the spot there, I think, if you want flat tap.
Chekio has that Spirit's Blessing placed on him, goes into the I'm a Monster, but never fires it. That's more just a reposition here in the fight. Epic Uppercut has been dropped, but they're more about running away from Rapio. Markus barely gets out of there, and now Rapio's overcommitted. Trapped in between Dracomariano, but he doesn't really have any tools to lock him down. This is full retreat from Poppy. Look how low their health bars are.
Davey had a really great fight. I mean, he starts that off with a good flank right on top of Chekio, impales him, does a ton of damage right away, and then he did it again to Creed. He got a lot of relics there.
Primal Fury starting to come low, but it has to be leashed at this point. Davey re-grabs it. Pikarinoobs are recognizing they finally got themselves a decent fight, trying to walk in and force his way in as Rapio on the Thor, but he has to fall back at this point. Hammer used entirely disengaged. Now it's USB who's low, but Abduct ends up missing. Warchi's gotten to the point now where he's starting to shred these frontliners a bit, but they can't quite lock down USB.
For now, though, Blink may at all, but Markus has one of his own. One more auto will do it. Markus finds his third. And all the while, Poppies back on the Primal Fury. Easy secure for them. Warchi just doing so much damage at this point. That Titan's Bane now finished off. Overpowered USB cannot even come close. And don't forget, Izanami gets even more pen the lower she gets. The more health she loses, that means the higher her passive gets, which means the more percent pen she gains against you. So she kills tanks very, very well.
I think you're so right to point out the late game nature of this Poppy squad as Markus does get to tier 2, and they should be able to get Pyromancer here as well. Pikarino is just giving up the map at this point. And now Fire Giant potentially too. They've got to make sure they're moving in, try and find some kind of way to slow all this down, but I don't know if they can. They don't have USB, and they're really not in position to fight. Fire Giant at half, and it might be a bit of a bait. It's been dropped. The Poppies go in to find one more kill. Davey has to use beads, but right there waiting is Warchi. Desert Fury not going to be enough. Warchi cuts through the Anhur.
Rapio's up, but he doesn't have any great targets to land on, but Mizzega's kind of left in no man's land at this point. Rapio did just come straight back down, but right into the waiting hands of Markus.
Hello, he'll grab that kill quite nicely. 11-1. I hadn't even recognized that Disparity was that bad in the kill column. And in comes the damage from the Scylla. No way Mizzega's going to make it out of this one. And now the Poppies starting to really get a stranglehold on this match. 10k gold. And Pikarinoobs, not only are they losing the fight, but they can't even get any farm on the map.
No, not at this point. The way that Warchi's played this Izanami is very, very impressive.
Yeah,
it looks great. I want to see more Izanami this year. I think it's a god that is very underrepresented at a high level because her damage output and playmaking potential is really, really high. And I wonder, I actually haven't tested this interaction yet, if the double auto attacks count as 2 in order to break the Odin walls. It looks like he broke Dracomariano out pretty quickly on that cage by Gold Fury. I don't know. It's something worth testing for sure, but I believe they do count as 2 autos for getting rid of Kukulkan passive or anything like that. So it wouldn't surprise me if it was the same for the Odin cage.
certainly an interesting interaction. I mean, at this point in the game, I'm more scared of Warchi than I am even of this Scylla. I know that feels a bit different than how it normally goes, but Warchi's shredding through everyone. The Titan's Bane kin size, full stacked Rage. He went single crit, and I think this is something we might see more of because of just how good Rage is and how much crit chance it gives you.
Yep.
I think this is the right way to have built this out.
I like it because what's his job so far in this game? Kill tanks.
Yeah.
So let's itemize for it. Let's get Executioner. Let's get Chin Size. Let's get Titan's Bane. And yeah, I mean, normally in that 6th slot, it's been a flex spot anyways, historically in Hunter builds. It's been a lot of Odysseus Bow. Sometimes you want double lifesteal in that spot. Sometimes you need defense. In this case, let's just build the best available Hunter item, and that's Rage right now. So let's get Rage, and the rest of the build is dedicated to doing exactly what we want, which is killing the tanks that Dracomariano abducts.
Warchi's in a great spot this game right now. Pikarinoobs definitely do not have an answer for it, and Davies not quite matching it. But they do have Merlin on the defense.
Yep.
You've got Kukulkan as a straight god too. Odie can kind of change the geometry of the fight in the middle. I don't think Pikarinoobs' defense is all that bad.
No, I don't think so either. I mean, Merlin is one of the best defensive mages in the entire game for sure. And his itemization isn't that far behind. I mean, he's got the Soul Reaver now. That's the big power spike. You're not in the worst spot in the world as Pikarino. You've got Anhur on the defense, which is better than you probably give it credit for because of that pillar. It's really hard to siege against that ability. So I don't mind Pikarinoob's siege defense. I just don't know if I love it that much down 16k.
That's right. If things are a bit more even, we might be able to talk about a different story. But into this deficit, it's going to be difficult. Still, though, time for Poppies to make one push on this Phoenix, about another minute and a half or so, a little over that they'll have to work with to try and grab these Phoenixes. All the tier 2 towers are down as well, and we're going to have really what feels like our first big base siege. We have not had that many of them this set. It's kind of been won, these fights in the jungle.
It really has been. It's been end the game off of a fight around the Fire Giant. That we saw a lot of teams last year make a lot of great defenses and really stake their hat on that.
Yep, SK did a lot of that.
What did they do at the end of the year?
Oh, they won Worlds, yep.
Oh, yeah, okay, that's a pretty good thing to do, I guess.
So it turns out being good at this phase of the game is not a bad focal point at all for them. They're going to have to worry, though, about a multi-pronged snake, I would say, at this point. Warchi, obviously, but what about Markus, Creed sitting on your back line? There's a lot to be defending against as Creed's already in, trying to get some damage he can onto the mid-Phoenix.
3-2 split this time around. We saw a lot of 4-1s last year. Where the team started to develop into this 3-2 a little bit later on, but it does kind of slow you down a little bit. It's a little bit more of a chip strategy than the all-in.
Dracomariano blinks in, can't find much with that abduct. Warchi is already committed the Dark Portal at this point as well, and the duck lands on the back line. Warchi gets the Scarab's Blessing, so he survives for now. Chekio sits to the back of the fight and just kind of waiting out the Scarab's Blessing was a USB, but he ends up paying for it handily. It was too long. Now Markus go all the way back to get down Davy. Make it back to the fountain. Rapio can't. Markus gets himself a double kill. They should be able to blow through Mizzega as well as Markus gets a triple kill at the end of the game. Maybe give him the quad. No, as a deicide, Dracomariano gets credit, and Poppies roll over them in game number 3.
Man, that was the exact sort of situation where Izanami just gets to absolutely farm. She's low on HP, she's maxed on that passive, and those auto attacks were hitting the overpowered USB for what, 500-600 in auto?
Yeah.
Forget about it. That's just way too much damage for any frontliner to be able to withstand. Again, the all-in strategy against a Khepri.
It's not it.
Seemed like the Pikarinoobs didn't play around that pick very well in my mind. It just wasn't the greatest overall team performance right there. We've seen better from them. Maybe these long sets and the long day are starting to weigh on them because I think that was their weakest performance we've seen.
It hadn't looked like the Pikarinoobs that we'd seen up until that point. A great job, though, with the draft from the Poppies.
Yep.
It felt like it bell curved nicely, right? They had this early game, kind of was a little bit slower in the mid, but then the late game was a monster. I liked the way the draft worked.
Completely agree. And now if I'm getting ready for Game 4 draft, if I'm on the Poppies, give Draco Khepri because these aggressive picks have worked, but he can play aggressively on that pick and then still have these great late game ultimates. Draco basically carried that game. He set Warchi up really, really well that time.
Well, it's now the Poppies who have broken our tie. They're up 2-1. We'll find out what happens with Game 4 and the rest on the other side of this break.